All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
We're back.
Welcome back to We Talk Live. I'm Jimmy Young of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Curt with Cannabis.net.
And you just heard from Tito Jackson, and he has joined us in studio here at our Performer TV in Quincy, Massachusetts. Tito, I appreciate so much for you coming in here tonight.
Thank you for having me. That was a really handsome brother on screen.
God,
I really appreciate that, man. That was a good day for me.
You know how to talk the talk, I got to tell you.
Yeah, that's what it's all about,
When
man.
was Denzel Washington in Boston filming?
That's who's going to play me in the movie. Denzel's playing me in the movie,
There
guys.
you go.
That's who's going to play me.
That's cool. One of the messages you gave us there, Tito, was to come take a walk in my neighborhood, in your neighborhood.
Yes, yeah.
There is now movement. Pure Oasis now, I believe, has a license, and Kobe Evans is going to open up any day now.
Yep.
What is going on in your neighborhood as far as the cannabis community goes?
No, definitely. So I live in the Grove Hall section of the city of Boston, which is the intersection of Roxbury and Dorchester, and Pure Oasis is going right there in that neighborhood. I'm very proud, actually. Kobe and I went to high school together. We both went to Brookline High School. Very proud of what Kobe and Kevin Hart are doing. It is absolutely critical that we see people who live in neighborhoods and communities who've been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. And these are communities that understand in that neighborhood. And I shout out to my friends in Western Mass and the like. But when it comes down to it, when you live in Boston, a school zone is not only when school is in, right? And it's around schools. It was around parks. And in that neighborhood, you saw thousands of people be incarcerated over marijuana, crack cocaine, heroin, and the like. And there's a disproportionality in the state of Massachusetts. How I came to do this work, I actually announced that I was supporting this as a city councilor on 4/20/2016 in the Boston Business Journal. I didn't actually know that the BBJ knew what 420 was at the time. It was very, very interesting.
You're being all sly.
I was like, okay, I didn't know. Okay, BB. Okay. So, but how I came to do this work is that I was Shalene, as well as Chanel stepped to me and they're like, yo, you need to step up on this issue. And they showed me data from the ACLU that showed in the state of Massachusetts in 2008 when actually having marijuana on you became legal, from 2008 to 2014, what you saw was a 300% higher chance of being arrested for possession if you're black, and a 700% higher chance of being arrested for distribution if you're black. I know that black people don't smoke at all. I know we don't sell it all. And in a state that is not predominantly black, there's a huge disproportionality there. So not enough yet is happening in the neighborhoods and communities. I'm looking forward to the legislation that Kim Janey in the city of Boston is actually advancing to make sure that there's equity. We see cities like Cambridge as well as Somerville and Waltham who are pushing equity programs, and we want people at the municipal level, the job I used to be in, to actually step up because there's a lot of power in that opportunity.
Absolutely. And I just can't believe, Tito, that it is 2019. Mm-hmm. It's the 21st century. I thought we had moved forward as a people, and it just frustrates me to no end to hear the same stories coming out of inner cities. By the way, not just in Boston, mm-hmm. right? But in the inner city. The education is disproportionate. Yep. The arrests, I almost feel, I'll use the word impotent to do anything about it. What can I do? What can we do other than continue to talk about it?
So the interesting thing about cannabis, though, is that your local elections mean a hell of a lot more than your national elections, right? So this happens on a state-by-state level at the state house across the and by the way, I want to give both of you guys credit. This isn't your first time around the rodeo, right? You guys have been doing this for years when people who were in elected office would run away from you.
Right.
Oh my goodness! It's a cannabis media. Let's like that. That's they're faster than anybody on the Patriots in the 4.2, right? 4.240. They're able to run the hell out of there, right? When they saw. So the thing is, one, it's organizing at the local level. I was actually just in Brookline at Netta, and interestingly, they're trying to roll back their hours. Right, so you have a municipality who voted for this, and now they're actually trying to roll back the time and potentially the number of days they actually can be open, right?
To create more of a demand? I mean, you go by that place, there's always a line.
I get it, but what they're saying is that there's a impact on neighborhoods and communities around the place. So the battle is not over in that space. So I think it's absolutely critical that we support people who are running for state office, that we support people who are running for city council in and around the state of Massachusetts as well as other states, because it's absolutely critical. And these are the people who, if supported, are going to have the backbone to step forward and actually change this. And I want to also, again, give you guys props, because in the state of Massachusetts, it was not elected officials that changed the law. We need to go back and remember.
That's right.
Right? This is what we refer to as a referendum.
Yes.
What is a referendum? That means everybody has to vote. You got to get over 30,000 folks to sign signatures and spend a lot of money to get something on the ballot, because oftentimes, and I was an elected official, sometimes we're not profiled in courage when it comes to issues that matter. So that's one of the things that we can do. The other piece is that we can actually push, and I know that some of my friends who are in this industry were on the show prior. They are not as handsome as me, and that's why they didn't come in. So if they was
they won't come in after you.
They're not going to come in anymore.
Oh yeah,
either,
Denzel,
right? So,
I'm not going in now.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to come in anymore. But when it comes down to it, we all need to be held accountable to also put our money where our mouth is in terms of actually funding people who are in the economic empowerment and equity program. There's a wonderful 20th century, maybe 21st century poet named Biggie Smalls, and he said it's all about the Benjamins, baby. That's a critical component in this space.
And you know what's amazing, that you're bringing this up during a week where we've seen some of the most successful African American personalities, athletes. I'm talking about LeBron James here, okay? Where money was right in the middle of his comments. You want to say something, don't you?
Well,
what's your take on that?
Because think about it, but even beyond the black-white issue, the NBA's doing business in China.
Yes.
Right? One of their employees, the Houston Rockets general manager, Daryl Morey, tweets out support for democracy. And what happens? It blows up because it affects the business relationships between two entities. Isn't it always about the money, Tito?
No, it definitely is always about the money. And in that case, you have someone choosing the side of I guess I'd say the side of enterprise, right, over the side of equity and democracy, and that becomes really critical. What we need to understand here is that this is a plant that is a healing plant, but it also has been based on the racist laws that we have had for years and years. It has been a harmful plant it's actually been an avenue for a lot of folks who've been sent to prison for long periods of time. And so it is absolutely critical also that we deal with one of the bills that is up at the State House right now would expunge right off the rip everybody's record. If you have a cannabis record, and I believe this on the House side, it is sponsored by my state representative, Representative China Tyler. We need to support her relative to that. Because, by the way, nobody should be making money on the for-profit side if people still have a record. So this piece around legalizing something, first, we need to deal with the harm that we've done to people and continue to do, because this is the gift that keeps on giving, right? Because when you go and you have a job and like, man, Jimmy, can I get a gig? Yeah, Jimmy, can I get a gig? Can I get a gig? Well, when it comes down to it, even with the ban in the box, at the point at which Jimmy is going to offer me a job, he gets to see my Corey, or in this case, I call it my resume.
Yes.
Right?
Because they call them curriculum vitae.
Government resume. Yeah.
Well, this is a government, because the piece is the people who have the most experience in the cannabis industry did it, quote unquote, illegally. Right. So I have a friend who's a grower. He happens to be. He's been growing for 20 years. He's 33.
Whoa.
Yep, do the math.
Okay, there's some math that goes around in that space.
Federal felon for 20 years.
Right, exactly. So the real piece has to be, how do we repair some of the harm with what's happening? Mind you, there are millions of dollars. You know, you have an industry right now on the wholesale side. You're talking about $4,000 to $4,500 a pound, because of the vape ban that is there. It's popped up prices. But when it comes down to it, the question is, what do we do with the profits that we have? Because a budget is a value statement. Where you spend your money speaks to really what you care about and what you're about. And so we need to, this is an industry, and it's a for-profit industry now in the state of Massachusetts, and we need to be reinvesting in the neighborhoods, the communities, and the people who are most harmed in this space.
No question about it. And $316 million worth of cannabis has been sold in Massachusetts since November 2018, when it became legal.
Yep.
That you are starting to see stories about the 3% that gets paid back to the communities.
Yep.
And you're starting to see, first of all, there's no city councilor or mayor in any town that is going to not take that money.
Well, Fall River would.
Well, that's an exception. That's an exception. That's an exception.
Can I get another water? Okay.
We'll take your money.
Hell to the no is the answer to. Yeah, they are going to take. It's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah, I know.
It's
I
all
understand.
about the Benjamins.
And they should understand that this is a great vehicle to improve schools, to improve roads in their community. Welcome it into the community. Don't look at that as an evil.
Yeah.
It freaks me out that it's the 21st century and they're still fighting for this.
And understand, a really interesting fact in the state of Massachusetts is that in the city of Boston, that was a joke, but in the city of Boston, I really appreciate how this thing works here, brother. Okay, can I have an ounce? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay,
wait, I got
that's it. Okay, cool. So,
Cristal.
He hooked me up with another water. I'm just saying, hey, this is how it works here. But when it comes down to how this is going to work, I think we actually hold on. What was your question? One more time.
My question is, I'm just angry. I'm
just
angry. I'm
He's
an
angry
angry white
grandpa.
man.
He's
I'm
angry
an angry
grandpa.
white man
Angry white guys.
about how my
y'all got a brother nervous in
Yeah,
there.
that's
Okay,
right.
cool. We
He's
get
getting red over there.
I just don't understand how we're still trying to sell it.
Oh.
The voters have voted.
Yes.
The town councils control those host agreements, and it's tailor made to improve their communities with cash.
Yep.
And they're resisting this.
They are, right? And so the piece is, one, we have to look at what voters have done, right? And as an elected official, right, I know we do the representative democracy thing, but when it comes down to it, people know what they're voting for. So we need to actually give them the credit that they knew what they were voting for when they move forward here. We know in Colorado over $250 million was collected last year. Just think about what that would mean to your property taxes if the state of Massachusetts had to collect an additional $250 million. You would not like the people who were up there. So this is and it's an amazing way to on the revenue side, because as an elected official, again, you don't like me if I raise your property tax. And the state of Massachusetts, we obviously have Proposition 2.5. Other states don't have that. But this allows for new money, new revenue to flow. It's essentially a sin tax, and it's a usury tax based on the people who are participating in the industry, and it's not a broad-based tax. It is a good thing. So we actually, again, have to support people at the local level and at the state level who are actually stepping forward and understand this. And I also, we want to see equity not only in urban centers across the state of Massachusetts, we want to see equity across the whole state of Massachusetts. By the way, on the alcohol tip, right, what Weed Maps actually is a really interesting, has some stats. Hey, you know what? Crime goes down by about 10%. You see housing values actually go up in neighborhoods and communities where cannabis on the recreational side is legal. There are some very good, and by the way, 25 26% decrease in
teen use.
Yes, and individuals who have fatal. So you have the teen use.
Teen use goes down in Washington State and in Colorado.
Exactly.
They're both the biggest legal states.
And then you have a decrease in fatal overdoses.
It's angry. His hands going every direction.
I know you're all about love, I know you're all about love in here.
I am totally about love.
Yeah.
Okay.
and I don't know. So I don't know if you missed. Did you miss this?
The memo?
He called me about the vest. I just went straight black.
The vest situation, or if we want to go back to the Future, why are we wearing a life preserver? It's all good.
Right. Yeah. That's right. And by the way, Tito, it's a fashion statement, but I'm schwitzing over here. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you guys
I had to represent the University of New Hampshire.
Right.
Okay, that's
we got
cool.
Brookline High plugged. We got New Hampshire, Dorchester. We're good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Let me ask you. You also are involved in the industry, have some licenses. Tell us what's going on.
Yep. So I own a company called Verdant Medical, and so we actually are vertically integrated. So we are going to do the great part about cultivating, and we're also going to process as well as grow. We have 2 host community agreements and 2 amazing communities. One, the town of Rowley, which is North Shore, Route 1. We're doing, so you know Rowley?
I know Rowley, but we don't. But it reminds me of Montague and Turner Falls. Why the hell can't we get this into the city of Boston?
I'm coming back. I'm coming back on that side too. So brother has to grow some stuff too.
Yeah.
So
you got to grow out the woods.
You got to grow in the woods.
I understand. Right.
And they were the town of Rowley was amazing. We were able to receive a host community agreement in 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
But you still had to get a location and pay rent before you moved in, correct?
Well, you're talking about my money, and you're right. It's so expensive.
Correct. And we know there's precedent. I'm going to Maynard now. I'm going to Maynard because David Rabinovitz of New Can Group created a precedent by getting that host agreement before he had to get a lease and pay rent.
That is a wonderful thing, and I think. So when we look at multiple states, so we see some states, and actually with the medical licenses, understand you got a medical license from the state first, and then you found a community. It's switched on a recreational side where you have to go get a host community agreement at the local level and then apply at the state level. This issue of how much it costs, and in particular for equity candidates who, I don't know if it's a really sad stat, but there's a report called The Color of Wealth. And it looked at black families and white families in the city of Boston, looked at their median net worth. The median net worth of a white family is $247,500. The median net worth of a black family.
I know what it is because you just said it on the show. It's $8, Tito.
$8. $8.
That's disgusting.
It's disgusting. And when it costs $1 million to open a store, that's a lot of $8.
Yes, it is.
Right? So a lot more than when it comes down to it, that's a whole lot. So those disparities are actually a very very real issue. My other store is actually we have a site in Provincetown. Which is going to be really awesome.
Yes.
We're right on 44 Captain Birdie Way.
Provincetown. What are you guys doing?
Provincetown is off.
Can't make this stuff up.
Faux cheesy. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And they were and have been very, very accepting, right? And I would also note there's going to be some towns that do really well.
Right.
And there are going to be some places that are not going to be as happy over the course of time when they find out, you know what, this is not the devil's lettuce, right? This is not all of the thing. Kim and Kanye did happen, so like part of the stuff they put out, Kim and Kanye happened. But when it comes down to it, we know that this is a real industry. And by the way, let's also get down to the fact this is medicine that actually helps people.
Oh my God,
and
totally.
They're not banning. They're not banning all of the legal drugs that we have in CVS. They're not banning OxyContin, Percocet, Vicodin, Dilaudid, and all of the other things. Because, by the way, I've never had anyone come up to my car and say, I need a joint. Like that has never happened in my life thus far. So when it comes down to it, we also need to look at this has been the off ramp, and we don't have the data because obviously we have the FDA issues. But this has been the off ramp for a lot of folks off the ramp of addiction and into a better life. And I think there's some things that we can look at in that space.
With you going through the process and getting the 2 locations and the licensing, what was it like for you?
Wow.
How did you get them? How did it become? How did you get approved?
Yeah, so when I got involved in the company and ended up purchasing it, they were partway down the way with the Provincetown side.
Okay.
On the Rowley side, we had to find that site, so we had to work through some folks who do site selection, and then we actually have 2 sites that are in the application space right now. One in Boston, in Mattapan Square, which would be an amazing community to be in. I'm 2 miles up the street in the Grove Hall section, and we also have another application in Somerville. And I would note that Somerville has done a really interesting piece. They made it a lot easier for folks in Somerville. They greenlit all of the properties that were eligible to be in the mix. So, by the way, that from a money perspective, because we have to do understand in this space, you have to do what we call scrubbing of a property. You need to know whether or not that property actually fits into the zoning. Right. So in Boston, it's 500 feet from a school and half a mile from another cannabis shop, right? So that becomes somewhat problematic. In the city of Boston, there's 126 public schools. That's not including charter or parochial schools or private schools. So it gets kind of tight in that space. So one of the things that you have to do is to figure out which buildings are actually even in play. So the interesting piece is in Somerville, what they did is they greenlit all of the buildings that were actually in play. So that meant you could go and speak to the owners of those buildings. In addition, we also need to know if the person has a mortgage, then most times they won't be willing to lease to you. And possibly the only situation that you can be in with them is purchasing it, because in the stack of papers that you sign when you sign a mortgage, there's a page in there that says you won't break federal law, right? So that also limits the number of people. So then you are only dealing with landlords who own the property straight out, unless you're willing to purchase a property. And Jimmy took back his checkbook last week, so I'm not able to write any more checks. Yep. On Jimmy's checkbook.
So back in the day when I was somebody and people used to ask me for my autograph, I used to say, "Why would you want it? It's not even worth anything on a check." Okay, so what the hell do you need my checkbook for? Which I think is pretty funny. Anyway, can we talk about the city of Cambridge?
Let's talk about the city of Cambridge.
Because we are friendly with the Revolutionary Clinics group. They sponsor my In the Weeds podcast. They offered a settlement with the city of Cambridge for, I believe it was a $5 million fund to help the social equity applicants. That was turned down. Yeah. And now the city is trying to. Can you explain to me what goes through the minds of these city councilors?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I think the objective of what folks were trying to do there was well-meaning. But I think
so is the law, by the way.
No, I got you. So I think the piece there is that so what people should know in Cambridge, I believe about a week ago, the Cambridge City Council came to the conclusion that they are only going to let equity candidates open for recreational use for the first 2 years. So and there was a amendment made by Denise Simmons, who's a really good friend of mine. And I think it was a really smart piece. And by the way, she was able to push Revolutionary Clinics as well as others to get $5-6 million on the table and understand what the money was going to be used for. And this is typically doesn't happen in business, right? That money is put into a fund so people who are going to compete against these other folks are able to receive funds. And understand they were going to give 5 to 6 grants. I'm going to say that one more time. Grants, not loans.
Not loans.
Right.
To equity candidates in order for them to be able to open. I personally believe that, and I testified on this topic, I believe that was the right way to go. Not only because, hey, Revolutionary Clinics has been open, they are, good folks. But they make some dough, right? Mm-hmm. The issue here is that the biggest gap here is the money to be able to open. Right. And so the thing is, access without economics means that we don't get over the threshold. So that's a critical component. And I think when it comes to this issue, there's just some pragmatism that has to actually be employed here. So I agree with the sentiment that people who were most disproportionately affected by the war on drugs should be first in line. I give props to that. But when it comes down to it, even if you're first in line, if you don't have the finances to be able to operationalize, it could be another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years for you to get the finances to actually be able to open. So again, as someone who's written legislation, it's very unlikely that your legislation goes untouched, right? And so I think the amendment that was put forth by Denise Simmons was the best way to go. That's not what happened in Cambridge. So what you have is now you have RMDs. So these are the medical operators who have been blocked out for 2 years. There has been talk of them actually going to the courts in a space using the Equal Protection Act to plead their case. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I think having the financial resources, to me, is the thing that stands out the most in order for these equity applicants to be able to not be burdened. And the other great piece is they weren't going to take equity in their company. Right. So if you get $1 million, you can open and you own 100% of your company. That is a critical component to actually being able to build wealth and be able to pass it on to you and your family.
And when I interviewed Steve Hoffman, we talked about this, and he wanted to see that come from the private sector. And here it is. Yeah, right? It was there, and it still isn't getting done.
Yeah, because Ron opened the checkbook up. So, let's Ron put the credit card down. Yep. No, but so I personally think what I saw there was a willingness for some of the larger corporations that have had a head start in terms of opening, being willing to actually come out of pocket. And as I noted before, a budget is a value statement. And $5 or $6 million is a substantial amount of money. And by the way, $1 million. By the way, if you have $1 million, you probably can raise another 500, 600, 750, or another $1 million. Because this weird thing happens when you have money. People want to give you money. It's a weird thing.
I wouldn't know about that actually.
What's that like, Jimmy?
I still got a couple of more of those checks, my brother. So so that's my take on Cambridge. It was an interesting flow. I want to give props to City Councilor Denise Simmons for the work that she did, and I'm not pleased that she was maligned in the way that she was maligned, because I believe that she was standing up for the greater good of the city of Cambridge.
I'm going to call an audible. Okay, Tito, can you hang out for the rest of the show?
Yes, sir. I asked for a pound. I'm sorry, an ounce earlier. Okay, well,
you're still waiting for your ounce.
This is cable TV. We don't have pounds. We have an ounce.
I'm teasing. But no, I can definitely hang out. I'm really having a good time.
Terrific. Curt, you're okay with that too?
I couldn't kick him off, no.
No, I can't. And Bruce Linton is going to join us on the phone.
Awesome.
All right, and that's Curt's friend.
We'll see.
I was going to say, I'm putting him on the spot again. So
we are Pro Cannabis Media.